Hey y'all, Bob with Million Mile Garage. This is part 2 of the Forgotten Camaro, his and hers. And this is the hers Camaro. If you remember from episode 1, if you watched it, this was the pepper gray metallic 79 Camaro that got the 385 transplant. So I'm just going to do a quick walk around. I don't think I've ever done that. Just kind of let you guys see what it looks like in the natural light. Just coming up to it. She's very shiny, straight and shiny. And this was several years of having it apart in the garage and block sanding and doing a lot of detail work. And just coming up, we'll crack the door open, see if we can get a gander at the upholstery. All the jams were reshot. This is I think it's a 1992 color called it's a General Motors color called dark yellow green metallic. And just looking at the Grant steering wheel, it's got the tilt wheel, and just showing again, she's showing 252,808. And I guess that upholstery is over 25 years old now. This material really did wear like iron. The car looks fantastic. The back window has a one-piece window tint on it, which definitely helps save on the interior. I think a lot of times we had a big white towel laying over it when it was a driver. That is a dash cap that I put on probably 20 years ago. It's held up pretty well. Nice shot of the Z28 wheels. And just walking around, just kind of giving it the once over. Not bragging or anything, but this did take best in class its first outing at a AACA show. Is it Antique Automobile Club of America? Yeah, AACA sponsored show in Vero Beach, Florida. So I was real stoked when that happened. Kind of get another shot of the interior here, another shot of the seats. And the seats basically have carbon inserts, some kind of carbon gray, and I kind of went with that on the carpets, but the carpets kind of faded. They turned green. And that's the color I was going for right there. You can see where they faded over the years. Probably could use new carpet. But other than that, this thing is like just about perfect. It's led a charmed life, everything considered. Most of the time we had a garage to put it in, which certainly helps to preserve on these, but I still had a fair amount of rust repair I had to do when I restored it. See if I can get the hood open. Kind of reach under here. Ugh. And that's a 385 cubic inch small block, 350 block, 400 crank, 5.7 rods, board 40 over. If it was board 30 over, it would be a true 383. Rocking the 400 air cleaner decal because I think that's how the cars should have all come. I even kind of cobbled together an emissions decal that shows 6.6 liter. So it does a good job impersonating a 400 car, even though they never existed. Tried not to overlook too many details. Even the booster, it's got a fresh booster on it, fresh master. The AC did blow ice cold on it when we parked it, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think I've used the air maybe twice since it's been up here. It did work, but who knows, maybe it still works. Probably needs a charge. Still rocking the R12. So anyway, that's just a quick walk around. In this video, we're going to overhaul the carburetor, and then we're going to take the car for a drive and see how it does. The carburetor on it was in really bad shape. So anyway, thanks for tuning in, and let's get to it. First on the to-do list is we're going to have to dive into this old Holley carburetor and see if we can resurrect it. Hey, just a quick rundown. This is a Holley list 1850-2. It's basically a 4160 Holley Universal 600 CFM 4-barrel. This has been sitting on this Camaro since we've had it in 1986 or 87, and we actually use the same carburetor on the Duster and the old gold Camaro sitting in the front corner of the garage. So I have about 500,000 miles experience literally just on these particular Holley carburetors. So the problem we were having is it was running really rough.
and a lot of times that's because of dried out gaskets or dirty idle circuits. I tried cleaning the idle circuits out with the idle mixture screws out. It didn't do any good. And this thing has been a little leaky for the last several years, and this car has been languishing for several years, kind of since we moved up here to Alabama. We just, with all the other car projects, other than that seatbelt video we did last year, I don't think we hardly have driven the car 50 miles. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by just taking the front bowl off. And you can tell this is an older Holly because it's got the slotted screws holding the float bowl on. And I tell you, it's been so long since I had this one apart, I honestly don't remember if this one's got an idle transfer tube or not. And those are really bad about leaking, where the tube goes into the main body. And a lot of times that's where you'll get a lot of rough running, because the car will be sucking accelerator pump fuel in through it all the time. So let's just see if we can just get this off without too much drama. And it might spill a little bit of fuel. I think it's pretty well dry. I'm probably going to come in probably right here on this vacuum tube and very carefully just move it a little bit. Yep, that came right off. We'll just get this off right here. Okay, that came off pretty easy. As you can see, it's got the blue style gasket, the Holly. Those work really well. Sometimes if the carb leaks a little bit after it's been sitting, if you just start it up, get everything soaked with fuel, or prime it the night before, the leaks will go away if you wait a couple hours. So anyway, these usually just peel right off. Oh, I love when that happens. Look how nice that comes off. So there's no gasket scraping or anything to do. So the only thing I'm going to want to do here is I'm going to try to separate the bowl from the metering block. Sometimes they're on a little tight. This one's definitely on tight. So I'm going to come over. I spilled a little bit of fuel, not too bad. Let's see if I can just set this on the bench. I may have to just kind of lightly tap it with a mallet. So we got a rubber mallet here. Let me just scoot behind you here. Real quick. Oh yeah. See if we can just kind of coax this loose a little bit. There we go. Got that off. You see that gasket was actually in pretty good shape. It's an earlier Holly, you can tell because it has a brass float bowl instead of a plastic one. And we're going to do a full basic overhaul. We're not going to replace the vacuum secondary diaphragm. I think it's still in good shape. But we're going to go through the carb, and we're just going to clean out all the passages. We're going to make sure that the idle circuit's clean. Every one of those tiny little holes, you have to make sure that there's no blockages. You want to make sure that the idle circuit's in good shape. That's usually what gives you a lumpy idle. And then also, since we have a new power valve, we'll go ahead and replace that. Looks like a standard 6.5 inch power valve. And the kit we're going to be using, I think, is a 37-119. That's kind of like the universal Holly overhaul kit. It kind of has the gaskets to do, I think, all of these basic 4160 style Hollys. We'll go ahead and we'll take the accelerator pump off as well. Take a look at that. Just grab a. Those were pretty relaxed. What sucks about these is if they do relax enough for the accelerator pump to leak, you have to remove the carburetor off the car to tighten them. And again, this car has not been driven a lot, and the rear float bowl has met its maker. It's not sealing anymore, and it was just a little leaky if it's been sitting. But I got lazy and let this be like this for quite a while. You can see I just lost one of the fiber washers that seals the bowl when I undid that, so that's going to be a little bit of work to clean that up. We'll replace all the fiber washers as well. And this should just come right off. I might have to coax it just a little bit. There we go. That looks like it's in good shape. Just showing you real quick for guys that aren't Holly guys. This needle and seat actually threads in from the top. It's got a set screw, and you loosen the set screw, and then you turn this nut and then adjust the float level up and down. We've got new needle and seat, so we're going to replace those as well while we have this apart. I'm just going to kind of give it a basic overhaul. these little clutch head screws, they take a tiny screwdriver. I'm just going to reach behind Laura real quick and just grab just a basic small, I don't know what you call it, like a number 1 screwdriver, whatever it is, 1/8. We're just going to go in here. Those were really relaxed. But you know, it's amazing once these gaskets take a seal, even when the screws get relaxed, they seem to stay sealed up pretty good. But again, it's probably been, we built that, there we go. Yep, all right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they're all out. This should just pop right off. There we go. Now, since this one didn't have hexes on it, it's just got slotted screws. That's usually the tip-off that you've got a backing plate, because behind this is going to be a vacuum chamber, just like the front here. So I think this same casting, it can be converted or used as a 4150, and then you would have the mechanical secondaries, and you would have a secondary metering block that would go back there as well. So when we get this peeled off, and this should come off pretty easy because it's a blue gasket, just going to be careful not to bend the plate. Nice to get that plate off first if I could. To it, let me get a putty knife if I can. I'm going to just get this secondary plate off. I just don't want to. I don't want to bend it. So I'm just going to come in and just very carefully work it off. There we go. That comes off unbent. That's always good when that happens. And then this blue gasket should just peel right off. And you can see there's the vacuum chamber. Later 4160s, this was all filled in. It was solid, and you didn't need that separate backing plate. You just basically needed a solid gasket, and then this part was the same. But you see, this has got a separate gasket for that as well. Whereas if you don't have the vacuum chamber, I think it's just one blue gasket. When I take this needle and seat out, you're going to see this float drop, just like that, as I'm unscrewing the needle and seat. And it's going to come right out, just like that. Squirt a little bit of WD-40 on there, thread that back in, and then you can see you'll see the float ball rise as we get the needle and seat screwed in. Of course, if I can find my, oh, there we go. Lost my nut. It's actually stuck to this one for some reason. Oh, that's the plastic sealing gasket for the set screw. I'll need that. New ones come with the kit, but I have a tendency to reuse them if they're not too crushed. There we go, and you can see the float ball rise. There we go. That looks pretty close. And if I take my float measurer, we'll go in, and looks like I'm only about a 1/16. So we'll raise that up just a tad. I've already managed to lose the set nut. There we go. There it is. Okay, we'll raise it up just a little more, about like that. And again, when you've got a sight window on these, they only have to be close. Okay, what I'm going to do is I got some compressed air, and I'm just going in and blowing out. That's where the idle mixture screw would go. So if I'm going in here, I can actually show with my thumb where that air is coming out. Watch, this actually moves my hair. It's actually coming out right here. And I just go through all of these orifices. I want to make sure that I blow them out with a little compressed air, so I don't have any issues with, yeah, all those are going through. That feels good. Because anywhere that you have a piece of trash that's tiny, holding up any of these little tiny orifices, it's going to make the car run really, really poorly. You don't want to have any problems with that. And just point, so I don't have any issues. Everything seems like it's clear. It's all good. See right there. If you look at this air bleed right here, this is I think that's the I think that's the high-speed air bleed right there. I got it coming out of my finger. Same's right. I know that's clear. There's the, I think that's the idle circuit air bleed, the fat one. That looks good. That's all good. So I did the same thing in the rear as well. Actually, that's the front. Sorry. Yep, I can feel that with my fingers. Those are all good. Yep, that's all good. All this is clear. You always want to make sure this stuff out here. There's the little discharge holes for the secondaries right there. I think if you go up a little higher, you can see the transfer slot. If I open this up a little more, and these are closed pretty good. There's the transfer slots. So this carb's set up about right. It doesn't take a lot of idle to get this one to open. It's a higher compression engine. You can see the transfer slots on this one here. See if I can expose them. There they are right there. There's not much slot exposed when you close this. It's kind of hard to tell. This is still kind of a little stained, but that's almost square. That looks really good. Like this. Compress it down. You don't have to line up the screws and get it to go on. Not a big deal. I should have my, those are going to be my accelerator pump screws there. A Holley carburetor is a very simple device. Not a lot of moving parts. You have the accelerator pump. You have the power valve. And of course you have the throttle body. And I think that's about it. Of course you have the secondaries as well. We're just going to snug these up good and snug, because I know these have a tendency to relax once it's on the car for a while. And sometimes you get leaks. So don't be afraid to cinch down on these. I don't think I've ever stripped the threads on one of these. Probably hard to do with a screwdriver anyway. Oh yeah. Those are real good and snug. Snug it up. Again, you don't have to go crazy with it because there's a lot of leverage here. Just like that. What I like to do is I put a little WD-40 on both sides. What that does is it keeps the gaskets from sticking on disassembly. I've never had any leaking problems, and I've been doing this for years. I think it's a trick I probably saw in Carcraft or something when I was 19 years old. Alright, so just put that on like that. That lines up just fine. This is going to go on just like this. That's where that's going to sit. Okay. I'm going to hang this on just like that. They got locating tangs, so these will hang on just like this. That way they don't walk around on you. Really nicely thought out. Okay, so that's on just like that. That'll go on just like that. And we put our metering block on like that. Just like that. It's going to go on like this. And I've got, I need to grab my, it seems like I've misplaced it. It's easy to do in here. What'd I do with it? Where'd it go? Where is my fuel transfer tube? I seem to have misplaced it. Well, I'm looking for that. Oh, there it is right there. So we've got 2 O-rings that come with the kit, and they're going to go on each tube. I went ahead and cleaned out the tunnels where these O-rings go inside on the float bowls. But I like to put a little oil on these, and that also will keep them from twisting and turning around on you when you put it together, so you don't have leaks when you start it up. There's our plastic washers. I put those on each one of these screws. This replaces the fiber ones that look like that. So, and those are real bad about coming apart on you when you snug the bowl screws up sometimes. So, never used the plastic ones before, so we'll find out how that goes. So, taking this like this. Also, I'm going to go ahead and let me think about this. You know, it's probably actually easier for me to put the rear bowl on first. Oh, I already have the rear. I'm already facing the rear. Okay. No wonder I was screwing that up. So we've got the rear bowl here. And I've got to grab a new one of these and a new one of these to go on the rear. And that's going to mate up with this, which I just cleaned. All right, let me grab these. There's that and that. Okay. So there is our new bowl gasket, or our new, it's a combination bowl and metering plate gasket. All right, so those line up good. That looks good. And it does come with 2 different metering plate gaskets, so just make sure you use the right one. I have the right one on this one. They have another one that fits like this. And you can see if you set it on here, it does line up on the tabs and everything, but it doesn't cover the corners of the metering plate. That would definitely be a problem. All right, we're going to get this lined up. Tell you what, we're going to stand this up a little bit so it can't fall off while I'm trying to do it. We want to get those tangs to line up. There we go, just like that. Okay, and then I've got those clutch head screws that have to go back in and line up with all those holes. It takes a pretty good grip. Don't be afraid to snug down on them. They're just clutch head screws. You don't want them coming undone on you later. There we go. Those are good and snug. That's on there like it should be. That looks nice. I'm just using my fingers to wipe stuff down. I'm very careful about not using a paper towel to wipe a lot of stuff off once I get it together, because I don't want any lint from the paper towel getting in there. I can see a few little dark specks or whatever, probably that were just on this piece of cardboard. That shouldn't hurt anything. But you definitely want to make sure you don't get any large specks in there, because you definitely will have a problem. I'm going to go ahead and put this bowl on, and I know because it doesn't have a metering block, it's going to use the short screws to install. We're just going to go ahead and put those on, make sure each one has a washer on it, because if it doesn't, you'll know real fast when you fill it up. You just want those good and snug. You don't want to like over torque it and warp something, but you want it snug enough so you're not going to have to worry about leaks later. And those are good and snug. Get those plastic washers compressed really good. Okay. All right, now that we got the rear bowl on, okay. Tell you what we'll do is we'll stick it on this side first. We'll get it started. See how I'm going to rotate it in and make sure that I don't have a problem with this O-ring twisting on me. Be real careful about that. Okay. Now, coming in here like this, I'm going to line this up right here. See that? And then I'm going to very carefully try to push this on. Being careful not to twist it. Okay, now I have the locating tangs lined up on the metering block, and I can come in and put a screw in on the bottom and get that started. I'll put one on the top, upper, make sure that's started. Okay, and we'll come in and just snug these two real quick. Okay, we got one there. Got one there. Okay, you can see how these have pressed in. You look in there, you don't see any O-ring squeezing out around anywhere. You want to look on both sides. So I'll take this and I'll turn it around for you so you can see the top. See this one down here? Look down there real good. You want to make sure that you don't see an O-ring sticking out around that tube, and you don't. So that's how I know that's seated in properly. If that's not seated in right, that's the main thing people complain about on these Holley carbs. You just take your time putting that on. That way there's not a lot of running around and hollering and screaming when it starts up and fuel spraying everywhere. So this should be nice and tight. Oh, tell you what I did screw up. Let's see if I can get this to go on. I may have to take this back off. Let's see. Never put these together after you have a beer. All right, that's going to go like that. And then if I can figure out what I did with my... What did I do with my... Oh, here it is. I set the carburetor on top of it. That's a good place for it, right? Now that's going to go on like this. See? And then this will fall right underneath it. It's easier that way. Just force of habit. I'm used to pulling the bowls off of these when they have problems, and putting them back together. You can pull the bowl off of this when it's on the car, but you got to be careful with that arm when you put it back on. And obviously you can't get the accelerator pump off when the bowl's on the carburetor when it's on the car. So anyway, so putting this in like that. Now this works right. I was looking at that before. It's like, God, that doesn't look right. So now that's working right. That's got the proper tension. Save the best for last because I forgot to do it. Right here is where my cork is going to go. That's going to seal my idle screw. I'm going to press that right in right there, just like that. That's going to go down in there like that. Then when I put this on, it's going to thread in through this. And I'm going to just thread this in. And it's going to expand it a little bit as it goes in. And that's what's going to keep me from having air leaks around that mixture screw, is that little pressed in cork washer. I'm going to very carefully seat this in. You don't want to like grind these in. You don't want to booger up the end of the mixture screw. You just want to just lightly seat it. And then just going off of memory on this car, I'm going to go out one full turn for initial. And then once the car's running and warmed up, then I can adjust those mixture screws to get the best idle. And over here I got to do the same thing. It's a little trick here on this side because I got to come in around this throttle arm. Not a big deal. There's my new cork. I'm going to press it right into the hole, just like that. Then I'll take my mixture screw, which is right here. You see it's in really good condition. I'm going to just kind of press that into the hole before I start threading it in. And then I'm just going to start turning it by hand. And then once it gets a little bit of tension, I probably could actually do that by hand all the way. But it feels like it's going to cut my finger, so I'm not going to do it. So I'm just going to come in, do the same thing. I'm just going to seat it in. Just as soon as that needle seats into the metering body, as soon as that goes in, I'm going to just back it out one full turn. There we go. I'm just going to go out one full turn. Boom. So, I think that's pretty much got it. We did the needle and seat. We did the idle mixture screw gaskets. And you also saw what we did for the rear metering plate and bowl. It's a combination gasket along with a metering plate because that one has a vacuum chamber in the rear. And then you saw we did to get the front together. You saw me put in the accelerator pump. You see that it's working properly. It's all lined up and moves just like it's supposed to. That's working good. So there we go. Carburetor rebuild 101. And that's basically all that was used during the rebuild. We've got our primary float bowl gasket, our primary metering block gasket, our power valve, our accelerator pump, the needle and seat for the primary and secondary bowls. There's the secondary metering plate gasket. There's the combination secondary main body and metering plate and float bowl gasket. And then just the carburetor base gasket that goes between the carb and sits on top of the intake manifold. And that's it. The only thing left to do is we're going to dump 2 ounces of fuel into each one of the bowls through the vent tubes. I have 1 ounce left over to prime the carb. And the fuel's kind of a greenish color because that's the same fuel I use for my vintage 2-stroke 70 horsepower Mercury outboard that sits on my classic Sylvan Super Sportster lake boat. Okay, we're gonna, oh yeah, we're gonna try to put about 2 ounces. See, we're starting off at 5. Just prime her up. Let's see how much I got in there. That's an ounce. She'll take another ounce probably.
Isn't that gasoline mixed with two-stroke?
Yep.
Oil?
Sure is. There we go. 2 ounces. And see if the rear will take as much. Every time I do this, I always dribble a little fuel. Okay, that sounds like it's full. Oops. Just put that right down the throat, but that's where it's going to go.
Where'd you learn the trick for putting two-stroke in the carb?
Not really a trick I learned. Because that's what was in the boat. And there's always a big jug of that laying around right over there. That big, huge red jug. I keep that in the garage because it's climate controlled in here, so the fuel doesn't spoil. And I'm just going to go in and just add some fuel. I didn't quite fill the rear up as much, but I'm just going to go in here and just dump some fuel down the throat, so it's going to fire off. We'll close this. This way the fuel pump doesn't have to labor. You can see there's hardly any fuel in this. Usually there's just a little bit if you're driving it a lot. So this is it'll probably within just a couple of seconds you'll see that fill up with fuel once I fire it off. Wipe all that down a little bit. We'll just tuck this out of the way. All right, I'm gonna light it up. And if we're lucky, there won't be any hollering and screaming and running around with fuel spraying everywhere. Time to light the fire. Let's check for leaks. What do we got?
Right there. It's all dripping from right there. See? Fingers all wet.
I hate when that happens. All right. Okay. Panning in. It looks like it's leaking off of that transfer tube, but it's not. It's actually that little sheet metal cover that's crimped in right there at the factory. And I wonder if I loosen up the last little bit of seal that was left cleaning it, because it's actually running out of this and dripping down there. There's no fuel coming out there. I had a little fuel piss out right here. This fuel line is dry, and it looks like it let loose on me as well. I could probably just tighten that up, it would be okay. But the main problem I got is I'm probably gonna have to take this carburetor back off and clean this off really good and mix up a little bit either DevCon or JB Weld, some type of gasoline proof epoxy. And I'm gonna have to just coat this area right in here. That's a common problem with these. And I've noticed the other gold Camaro, the one that's parked in front, has been doing it for a while, but I don't drive that one. But we're gonna take that off and work on it again. But everything else looked like it was sealed up tight. All the gaskets, all the O-rings, everything I did. Just we got one nasty leak right here. You can see there's a whole puddle of fuel right there, and that's just from the car sitting too much. That line shrunk, and probably if we just walked away, if we just waited a couple hours, that line would probably seal itself without even tightening it. It's just old and hard. As soon as it gets a little gas flowing through it, it'll swell up, it'll stop leaking. But definitely not something you want to take a risk on. But we're definitely going to have to take the carb off and deal with that. We're going to have to leave the carb on its side, so this is facing up towards the sky. We'll mix up a little bit of, either DevCon, epoxy, whatever, some type of, probably JB Weld. That stuff works really good for that, and we'll fill that in and fix that, and then I think we'll be good to go. Okay, we got the heavy-duty JB Weld. That's the 24-hour cure of the good stuff. We got it mixed up. It's that nice gray color. And then just looking over here, we've got our vacuum gauge hooked up. And it's leaked down just a tad. I had it maybe like 23, maybe 22, 23 inches, maybe 15 minutes ago. I put a nice dollop inside the button, and you can see it kind of stands just a little proud. It's up just a little high. And you can see where it kind of dropped in on just that one edge just a little bit is where I pulled a vacuum, and it did suck it down just a tad. That might be where it had the worst leak. And then I just took a paper towel and wiped the excess off around the edges where the button was originally crimped in to kind of sort of give it that factory look. That gray after it gets a little grunge to it, it'll probably kind of look like that rest of that iridite finish, that gold iridite finish is kind of worn off the cast aluminum. So, holding the vacuum, and you can see I got the needle and seat in, hooked up to the transfer tube, and then with the carb bowl sitting up like that, it just holds the kind of, the float kind of hangs down and kind of still drags into where the needle and seat is. And once you pull the vacuum on, the needle and seat won't come loose. You can move it around, and it'll still hold a vacuum. So I'm real happy about that. In fact, I'll just show you real quick. I can just take this and I can move it all around. I can hold it upside down. Still holding a vacuum, even holding it upside down. So it's got a good needle and seat. Real happy about that. We'll just set her back up. And then I'm going to stop screwing around with this before I mess up the really clean job I did of putting that stuff on there. We'll give her 24 hours to cure and see how it does. Take a look at this PVC hose. You think that was about done? That might have been the reason the car was running so rough in the first place. Going off of memory, I think it was actually 2002 we put the new engine in the green Camaro, and this was the fuel filter I put in. I don't see a name on it. Probably an Advance Auto house brand, whatever that was. Probably made by Pure Later, Wix, whomever. And here's an actual Wix one. And these are just those clear plastic see-through filters. I like them. I've never had a problem with one, and I like to see if the fuel's flowing and see what the filter looks like. So you can always check the filter for rust or crud. That's a Wix 33002, which is a 5/16 fuel line. And something interesting, I buy Wix because I like to buy American, but I thought you guys would get a kick out of this in light of everything going on. It says Russian Federation. So this was actually made in Russia! And looking here, this fuel line is actually crispy. The inside liner, it actually crumbles like pottery. It's rock hard. Look at that crumble. I mean, it's so hard. There's like no flexure left in it at all. So I think this must be the, oh, you see that crunch? It's just crumbled. That's scary. I had to cut the line to get it off of the steel part. You can see there's a nasty crack that formed right there. So that's just it's done. Okay, I'm just fine tuning on it. Looks like it's running pretty good. We got it up to temperature. Just panning in right here. There's our JB weld bit there. It's dry, bone dry. All right, let's take it out and test on it a little bit. Okay, we're just motoring out, getting her up to temp. Pretty much up to temp, I guess. We're already tuned on it. Brand new stretch of pavement right here. Just gonna feel how responsive it is at 45. Just gonna give it some pedal. Pulled up to 60 instantly.
I don't know what you did, but that feels better than the last time I was in it.
Yeah, it feels like it sticks its nose in the wind good. We're kind of hidden into the wind too. The wind's blowing about 30 miles an hour today. Typical northern Alabama. Now that the weather's starting to warm up a tad, now we got the windage. Ooh, we're on pavement right here. Slow down. For some reason, they ran out of pavement, so they only got like maybe 1/8 of a mile left to do, maybe 1/4. It's amazing how thick a layer. It looks like they are actually 2 layers of pavement, right? They put one down the other day. They came back and put another one on. I swear that pavement looks like it's 3 inches thick. Nice and choppy right here. Just what an early F-body likes is choppy pavement. All right, we'll give her some pedal. Already in the second. upshifted at 55. It was like half throttle. Car's running, feels much healthier. So just need to have the carburetor cleaned up, fresh gaskets, get the idle circuit tuned up good. Probably having that leaky PCV valve hose, probably get rid of the lumpy idle. You can just step on it one time going up this hill too, get a 3-2 shift. Goes up pretty good. Okay, now that we've tuned on the car, we know she's running strong. Before we test on the exhaust, we're going to put in a special shifter called a rally shifter, and it also is a stock GM shifter, but it allows you a little more control over shifting the gears. I think we're going to wrap this one up. I got kind of tired. Smash that like button, or you don't have to smash it. You can just push it. Push. Come on and push it. Not feeling it? Give me a like if you want, or you can leave something in the comments section. Just leave it PG-13, and we'll leave it at that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.